Father, Son, and Violin. Chapter 6, Prelude to My Learning the Violin. 1. My hand-copied violin method book, Homan. Once I possessed my own violin, I could not contain my excitement and ran straight to Wang Shi's home. Wang took a glance at my dear ugly baby and burst into laughter with a sneeze. He made some very unpleasant comments, saying my unvarnished treasure looks like a naked woman. As for my poor erhubo, no language could be found in the dictionary strong enough to taunt. How could anyone in this situation tolerate it? I put my baby back into the old case and walked away. Up to the doorway I felt it would be too easy for him if I just disappeared like that. I turned back to him, "You're not a good man." Wang laughed even more, first with his face to the sky, and then bent over towards his navel. I would have jumped out of his window if I had a parachute. I opened his door indignantly. "I'm going to tell Lu Xiaobing." I said that only to express my anger. Unexpectedly, it worked. Wang chased me and dragged me back to his home. He took out a broken violin bow and explained to me with sincerity, "Once my younger brother sat on it. If you can, or find someone who can fix it, I can let you use it for some time. It's a broken bow, but it is a violin bow, much better than your erhu bow, for sure." Wang took the Homan violin method book from his music stand and turned it back to the first page. Next he taught me a little about how to read scores and even demonstrated a couple of times. I was so very excited that I forgot all of the humiliation from only a few minutes ago. When I packed up my violin, together with his broken bow, and walked to the door, Wang again blocked my way. He took out a crinkled letter from his pocket, it looked like it had been in his pocket for quite some time, and handed it over to me mysteriously. "We're friends, right? Friends help each other. Hand it over to her, Lu, you know what I mean, secretly, please. Make sure nobody sees it," he reminded me again from his window. The next morning I went to see Teacher Lao, as I remembered he had the Homan book and had once said he could let me borrow it when the time came. What I found out was that the method Homan was not his property but the property of Ma. I will talk to Ma again next semester when we are going to buy a new violin. Lao comforted me. Nothing more I could do. I turned to leave when Lao asked me if I would give him a hand sorting out some recording tapes, big tapes, as well as some records, as we still had 2 hours to go before the rehearsal. He played the tapes on a recorder and the records on a phonograph. When the music started, Lao would tell me the title of the music as well as the name of the composer, and I would label them. I remember there were symphonies by Tchaikovsky, Beethoven, etc. Rimsky-Korsakov's Capriccio Espagnol drove me crazy and became my most favorite orchestral work. The music went on and on. Time made no sense to me anymore. My spirit soared to a completely different sphere until Teacher Lao turned off the music and told me, All these are called non-title music, a Chinese political name for Western classical music. When we have time later, we can do more criticizing together. Since then, to help teacher Lao sort out the tapes and records became the best excuse for me to see him often. Before rehearsal, Lu Xiaobing asked me to look after her school bag as usual. I caught the opportunity and passed Wang's letter to her, secretly. Lu looked excited. Her face turned red when she took the letter. She even rubbed my hand a little. To avoid a misunderstanding, I quickly told her it was not I, but my friend Wang Shi who wrote the letter to her. Immediately her face turned blue and she returned the letter back to me without opening it, looking very disappointed.
Since when did you become a postman?
When Lu was about to walk away from me, she bumped into Captain Li. I believe Li was somewhere observing us the entire time. Li seized the letter from my hand and quickly opened it, then read very loudly.
If you were the sun, I wish to be the earth, turning around you forever. If you are the earth, I wish to be the moon, turning around you forever.
Meanwhile, more and more people came closer to Li, forming a little circle, among them also Ma. Li looked at everybody, and again, more importantly, looked at Lu. He found Lu didn't really look offended. To Li that was Lu's tacit consent, therefore he courageously went on with his reading.
I think the best would be I become your ballet shoes, let you trample my body whenever you wish.
Inevitably, a huge burst of sneers poured on me after Li's performance. Li waved the letter in the air with great satisfaction and asked,
Who wants to see more? Who wants to see more?
As I hesitated as to whether I should take the letter back, Lu stretched her little finger towards Li. The letter was soon in the hand of Lu. Lu looked at me remarking,
A man with courage should be respected.
Lu moved her eyesight to Li and again remarked,
Unlike someone else.
Then to me again,
Go to thank him, but also don't forget to tell him, unfortunately his shoes may be too big for me.
After that, Lu carefully folded the letter and instead of giving it back to me, put it into her school bag. My subconscious ordered my hand to take her school bag as always. But this time, she wouldn't let me. As soon as Lu left, Li suddenly became unusually friendly to me. He tried to find out from me who that man with courage was. His hot attitude looked as if he wanted to form an ally of anti-love rival with me. Seeing that Li left me to go find Lu, Ma said to me in a disdained tone,
The same letter I also received before, only the last sentence was, I think the best would be I become your violin case, let you lie inside my body whenever you wish.
After that Ma added her comment to Wang.
That tall guy is really not a bad fellow. Not bad at all, only does silly things sometimes. What a big boy.
Ma's mouth was talking to me, but her eyes were busy looking at something else. Suddenly, she intentionally provoked me by grabbing my bamboo flute and running away.
Give it back to me at once, otherwise I will call you.
I threatened her with my usual weapon, to call out her nickname.
Call me whatever you like, better let everybody hear it.
Ma said as she quickly ran in Li and Lu's direction. I chased her up and caught her before everybody's eyes.
What are you doing? Are you crazy?
I shouted. I thought she might be embarrassed or even angry, but on the contrary, when she saw Li, Lu, Chan and all others were watching us, she leaned her body towards me exaggeratedly, and bit my ear saying,
Mission completed. Good job.
With Lu's wide-open eyes, Li's wide-open mouth and Chan's wildly standing hairs, Ma returned my flute back to me and slowly walked away with a smile of some kind of satisfaction. During that day's rehearsal, I was pushing the rhythm from beginning to end. Afterwards, there was no need to look for Ma, as she was waiting for me outside of the rehearsal room. The place she stood was so obvious, as if she wanted us to be seen by all others.
What do you mean by mission? What mission? What's the matter with you today?
I had a million questions to ask but didn't know where to start.
The feeling in my heart that dancer should have half.
Ma said sourly.
What do you mean? You mean? You and me?
I felt totally lost.
From now on you might as well call me Xiao Mao. I mean, I only allow you to call me Xiao Mao, temporarily.
She ordered.
But you said you disliked bamboo flute, of any kind.
I reminded her.
You can reform yourself to be a violin player. Can't you?
She stressed. Later, after I reviewed the whole thing, I realized that was the instant Ma decided to give up hope for Lee. Therefore she wanted Lu to share part of her broken heart by means of pretending to be my girlfriend. At the same time, she wanted to pass a "stop trying" message to Chan Flute. Additionally, I think she probably had a little change in taste by taking me as her new boyfriend, temporarily, or as a kind of anesthesia for her lovelorn heart for the time being. But my brain was filled with violin and violin only, with no room at all for this romantic nonsense, or anything else. That meant I could reject Ma easily, but I couldn't reject Homan, the violin method book she possessed. I traded my little dignity for the violin method book, Homan, temporarily. I took it home and hand-copied it, note by note, line by line, page by page, day by day and month by month. During the athletics lessons at school, I pretended I had a stomach ache and hid myself in the classroom copying the notes. Back home during cooking time, I asked Mimi for help so that I could copy the notes. After supper, I occupied the only table at home, along with the excuse of copying notes for publicizing Mao's thoughts. Father was again away from home, being reformed at the May 7th Cadre School. No one in the rest of the family understood what I was copying, especially as I changed all the titles to revolutionary names, such as Praise for Mao's Thoughts. Even late at night, after my brothers went to sleep, I sometimes got up and used a flashlight to copy the notes. Homan is a duet written for 2 violins. In practice, I only need to copy the notes for 1 violin, but I did both. That passion and effort, I had only applied once before, in the year 1960, when I desperately tried to prevent myself from death by starvation as I dug Chinese potato roots to eat. I worked so hard that my hand was blistered. Finally, I finished my copy of the violin method Homan, completely, from book 1 to book 5. Two, bow issuer. Now, about the broken bow Wang lent me, I luckily found an acquaintance who worked as a car repairman to fix it for me using a hollow copper tube. Although the bow was very heavy, just as Wang said, much better than the erhu bow, for the sake of clipping the violin steadily between neck and shoulder, adopting the same theory as Chinese gongfu, I made myself a sandbag to hang over the scroll of the violin head. Compared with that, the overweight bow became insignificant. Unfortunately, the prosperity did not last long. One day, when I was tired after a long hard practice, I put the bow on a bench. Just a few minutes later, back from the public toilet, I found my brother Danson was rubbing his bottom from pain. Before I could feel amused, I saw my bow stick was divided again, into more than 2 pieces. Oh my God! Now what? To fight with him, I couldn't win, and scolding him wouldn't put my bow back together again. Though Danson hinted he wouldn't hit back, I stood there, still, miserable. Seeing me begrudgingly saying goodbye to the remains of my dear bow, in fact not my bow, but a bow I borrowed from Wang, as we agreed. Looking at me with such sadness and remorse, my brother asked, "How much would it cost to buy a stick like that?" Danson had no alternative but to painfully break 2 of his bamboo-made dummy cash boxes he saved every day for many years. While we were busy counting the money, coin by coin, the younger brother of our mother came to see us from Junyi, the holy revolutionary site that was Mao's base during the Civil War, but then and now, still among the poorest places in China. This explains why for him, coming to see us was less important than coming to buy some pork fat for frying oil. By that time, each Chinese head was rationed very limited plant oil per month. For the sake of buying fat pork for Uncle, I had to get up at 4 o'clock, in the dark the next morning to line up in the cold. After 5 hours, Uncle was very pleased with the fat pork in his hand, but at the same time disappointed that the pork was not as oily as he would have wished. All the same he repeated, "I don't know how to reward you."
But I know how you can reward me.
I captured that once-in-a-lifetime opportunity and requested,
In fact, you don't have to reward me, just lend me 15 renminbi.
At that time 15 renminbi was 1/3 of his monthly wage. Looking at Uncle's frozen facial expression, quickly I pleaded, explaining how important the money was to me. To put the importance concretely, to buy a violin bow for me now will change my life. Repeatedly I promised that he would get his money back with a tremendous profit when I grow up. Immediately following, I handed over a letter to him, a beg to borrow money letter. In the letter, I also begged him to keep it secret from my mom. Ladies and gentlemen, think about it, how a 14-year-old boy could do such a thing. How strong his desire to play the violin must be. I don't know whether my uncle was moved by my passion, that's not important. What was important is that he gave me the money, although not directly in my hand, but into the hand of my mother. Mom did not only put the sum in my hand, but also a severe scolding. Frankly speaking, not to mention the scolding, even a severe beating would have been worth the value. Luckily, I bought a nice used violin bow at a second-hand shop with the money. But, to my extraordinary bitterness, only a few days later, Wang saw my new bow and said to me, "Since you already have your own bow, how about returning my broken bow to me?" When he was told that his broken bow was even more broken, his face turned very serious. Again and again he emphasized the importance of that broken bow of his. To me, the meaning was obvious. He wanted my nice new bow to compensate for his old broken one. I felt I was being cheated and trapped. I ran straight to Lu Xiaobing's home to express my fury. But when I got Lu's home, I happened to see her father was severely ill.
Why not take him to the hospital?
I asked.
We just got back from the hospital. The doctor says he's not sure from which disease my father is suffering.
Lu said to me with tears. At that time in China, it was the same throughout the whole country. Doctors who could actually cure diseases were sent out to be labor reformed. The remainder, those left in the hospitals, were those who could not cure diseases.
Don't worry, let me think.
I comforted Lu, and then went for a 3-kilometer marathon again, back to Wang's home since I knew Wang's father was a medical professor. Wang heard the bad news and revealed his unimaginable excitement obviously for the chance of a profitable achievement, profitable not for money, but for beauty, or for love, or both. Together we raced to Lu's home again. At Lu's home the way Wang called Lu's parents, Lu Mom, Lu Daddy, made my teeth ache so badly they felt as though they would soon fall out. That vinegar flavor proved that I did in fact like Lu, quite a bit perhaps. But that was a very critical moment, a moment not to fight for a girl, but for the life of Lu's father. Wang took an old notebook out from his pocket and wrote down all the details about Lu's father's symptoms. I took a marathon again, for the fourth time, back to Wang's home with him. Wang's father was waiting for us. Hearing his son's report, the professor anxiously said Lu's father might be suffering from a kind of acute inflammation. If not treated in time, his life could be in danger. The professor quickly covered his face with a big hat and carried a common army bag on his shoulder. Together, the three of us hurried to Lu's home, for me the fifth marathon in the same day. As soon as we arrived at Lu's home, the professor took some medical instruments out of his bag and examined Lu's father. Quickly the professor wrote a letter and asked Lu's family to take the father to the recommended hospital and talk to a specific doctor at once. Afterwards, the professor reminded me,
"Don't blather to anyone about today."
Wang explained to me that as his father was supposed to be a knockdown anti-revolutionary scholar, the professor did not wish to bring trouble to others for his underground medical activities. That's why only in darkness would the professor see the patients who shouted, knocking him down during the day. This also explained why my friend Wang Shi needed a notebook with him at all times. Just like that, the life of Lu's father was saved. A few days later, when Lu's father recovered, the working-class mother said to her daughter Lu Xiaobing,
"Who said your tall friend comes from a bad family? I think his family is very good."
The mother's words made Lu blush with shame. She explained,
His name is Wang, not my friend, but a friend of my schoolmate Chen. In fact, I don't even know that tall Wang much at all.
Lu's father's incident alleviated the crisis of the bow problem, yet it remained unsolved. I checked almost all the musical instrument shops in Changsha, hoping to find a bargain. One day I passed the Changsha May 1st cultural goods store. The memory of being chased out by that little fat man made me nervous. I finally encouraged myself enough to walk in again. To my surprise, that 28 renminbi violin was still there, only the price was reduced to 20 renminbi. With the excitement, I decided to contact my dear aunt who used to be the closest to me in the world. I wrote a letter to her, the same letter I wrote to my uncle, mom's brother, with the content, "To buy a violin bow for me now could change my life, you will get your money back with a tremendous profit when I grow up, etc., etc., etc." Finally, I also added the request, to keep it a secret from my parents. 2 weeks later my aunt came to see me from her hometown Xinhua, to exploit the working convenience, as she explained. I took my aunt to the Changsha May 1st cultural goods store right away, partly as I was looking forward to meeting that short fat fellow again. After we arrived, aunt gave me 20 renminbi, twice explaining that 5 out from the 20 were given by my uncle Din. I threw the sum on the counter as I dreamed of doing for such a long time. What a pity the short fat man wasn't there, only the thin lady was present. When I opened the violin case I found the neck of the violin was off of the body. The sales lady argued,
"Because of that we reduced the price. Find someone to glue them together, it will be as good as new."
No need to find someone, that I can do myself.
I replied proudly. I noticed the sales lady trying to avoid eye contact with me the entire time. Purposely I asked,
You do remember me, don't you?
"No, I don't."
She denied coldly. Seeing me disappointed she changed her tone.
"Nowadays what good does it do to remember so many things?
She paused.
You are much taller now. You used to come here very often, how could I forget you?"
That's very nice of you to remember me.
I was half satisfied.
But do me a favor, Please send my regards to that fat man and tell him that the child has bought the violin.
I spelled that out with great pleasure.
Xiao Ga, you mean my Xiao Ga?
Her voice trembled.
All right, I'll forward your greeting to him when I also go there.
Go where?
I puzzled.
He is gone.
She answered in an undertone.
Gone where?
I asked again loudly.
Dead, D-E-A-D, dead.
She shouted.
What? How?
I was shocked, but did not give up questioning. To put it in a Chinese saying, breaking an earthenware pot to inquire the bottom.
Do you have an end? How? Gunfight, of course.
She lost control and cried out.
My poor husband did not even take a look at our child.
She lowered her head down and never lifted it up again. During the Cultural Revolution, there was a period of time called Wudo, militant. The rebels and the loyalists both had arms. They fought war with real bullets. If you Google it, you will find the number of deaths in the year of Wudo is between 300,000 to 500,000. As always, 100,000 more or less does not bother my people very much. This man named Gao, who used to chase me out of the music store with a broom, was just one of them. I felt a total emptiness in my brain, quietly leaving the store with the violin. On my way home, I decided not to hate that poor short fat fellow anymore. Actually, he was shapeless, no longer short nor fat anymore. Being frank, I even felt a little sorry for him. Who said, death concludes everything? Back home, I compared the new bow with the second-hand bow, going back and forth over and over, finally deciding the second-hand bow was the better one. Hence, I endured my pain and gave the new bow to Wang as compensation. After that heavy burden was removed, I felt much relaxed. From then on, I could play my violin in peace. Just like that, the prelude to my learning the violin started.